IAS Academy. In today's video, we will be discussing about a brief history of Swadeshi in India from 1800s to the present period of time. We will also be discussing as to why now again Swadeshi is making a topic into the headings. And another important thing is Swadeshi now as relevant as it was before, or is it just a history topic that we discuss about? Understanding? So, this will be a topic that will be a debate between the history and contemporary present. Alright. First and foremost, when we use the word Swadeshi, let us break down Swadeshi. Swadeshi. Swa means one's own country. That is, Swa means my, Deshi, country. That is, within my country. The so-called element of Swadeshi can be attributed to economic perspective, social perspective, political perspective, okay, and also like we said, from the history to the present, it gives a psychological perspective and it gives a nationalistic niche. Understanding? So, if you see what does Swadeshi speaks about? It speaks about self-sufficiency, self-realization, self-reliance, understanding, or in other words it is more towards indigenization. It is about your, let us say, local or localization. Something that is in my country is to be used by all the members of my country. Understanding? So, you have heard about this Swadeshi concept in your history classes, right? You have seen 1905, Swadeshi, Charaka, Gandhi. So, you have associated with the leaders, personalities, things. For example, your Swadeshi movement started. This was after your partition plan. All these things you would have heard. Somewhere I was speaking that about in 1900s, right? Why now in 2025 this is garnering the topic, if you see? That is because recently our Prime Minister Narendra Modi has also voiced out for and also gone towards vocal for local. He urges, this is the present context that we are discussing. Our Prime Minister Narendra Modi has said that we have to make sure we buy more of localized products. We spend our Indian rupee on ourselves, that is ourselves meaning our products, to make sure that Indian rupee doesn't leave the country. Meaning as in what? We are not putting our money to buy someone else's product. See, now there is a huge deal of understanding we need as to why this statement is made. On the same lines, when we say this Swadeshi, these are all in the present context of 21st century, where Swadeshi has taken different forms and flares. Understanding? So, is this it? Vocal for local. For that reason are we discussing about Swadeshi? No, if you see, many of our policies, be it with respect to Atmanirbhar Bharat, this is also speaking on the concept of self-reliance. Now because I used the term self-reliance, let me tell one thing. Now I am asking, Swadeshi was a concept again like the video title itself, 1800s. 2025 pe how will it be useful? 2000s pe how it will be useful? Is it of a worthy ideology to pursue? The answer to this lies in events that happened post 2019. What events happened that shook the entire world post 2019? Your COVID pandemic. Your COVID pandemic was an eye-opener for India to be more self-reliant. Why? The excessive dependence on China, when China tried to put a blockade on us, again Galwan Valley clashes, all this coupled made us realize one thing. If we have to sustain ourselves or we have to proceed India in the wake of 21st century dream, then this should be our guiding mantra. Or that is what our Prime Minister Narendra Modi also tells in the name of vocal for local, starting from the STEM stage to the top nationalistic stage. So this is when Atmanirbhar Bharat became now the need of the hour than ever before. Understanding? Back then Swadeshi was used to create nationalism. Now Swadeshi is needed to protect our country from excessive exploitation. What is this excessive exploitation? In a little bit later we will be discussing. Understanding? So from 1880s or more specifically 1820s to 2025s, we are seeing a continuing trend of this theme of Swadeshi, self-reliance, local made. Understanding? Now we saw the present context as to why we are discussing this topic. Now we will dive back deep into the history as to we will see about your Swadeshi as a concept. First and foremost, we will go to the 1800s. How the concept of Swadeshi has evolved from 1800s to 2025. So we will begin with the evolution of Swadeshi. Look at this. In 1822, Samachar Chandrika. Okay. The story we will date it back to your Bengal. It's more of an orthodox, ultra-orthodox. Why I am telling ultra-orthodox means? See, it was associated that if, okay, I told you Swadeshi previously we discussed for nationalistic concern, then post 1900s also we see it is for the nationalistic concern, but from 1800s because of religious issues also, in order for a person to be religious to his or her, okay, adhere to a person's religious identity, then they have to reject the European goods. Understanding? This also served for national reasons, that is again trying to give more specific adherence to your own local economy. But this came second. The first primary thing here was about if you have to maintain your religious identity, you will make sure you will reject the European goods. Any person who does that, then only he was said to be, let's say, pious. Same thing if we see with respect to Gopal Hari Deshmukh or Raj Narayan Basu, all of them have also spoken about localization or reliance on Indian products before we speak on this. Let's take this one perception. See, when you are British, the way British had converted India, India was made as exporter of raw materials and importer of finished goods. Now these were coming at cheaper prices. Why? Because there was industrialization in Europe. So we were feeding their industrialization and we became a market for their industrialization, which made our goods more costlier, right? At this point of time, millions and millions of people whose livelihood were surrounding these, let's say, handicrafts, cooperatives, farmers, all of these people felt the brunt of it. Constant famines, constant famines. Coupled with this, see, in your European countries, when industrialization was happening, there was a strong backing of agriculture sector also. In India, none of those. Even in that agriculture sector, levy huge amount of taxes. So our agriculture was also ruined. We were made sure that we had to do this, that is our Indian economy was converted as exporter of raw materials, importer of cheap finished goods. So we had to feed their industrialization. With this handicrafts, let's say clothes and all these things being ruined from us, the textile industry, all of this being ruined from us, people had to shift back to the already overburdened agriculture. So for most of these people, it felt like going back to the Mughal period would be better. Understanding, in your 1857, yes, 1857 Sepoy Mutiny, the Sepoys tried to bring back a Mughal emperor. See, the symbolic is, yes, they have ruled for a very long period of time, so we have it, but one more reason was people felt that if our own rulers, rajas, kings, chiefs came back to power, they will make sure they will bring in or usher prosperity to the people. They will allow for us to continue with our goods. This was the mentality. That is, they started seeing the Western or the things that they had did, the evil deed on us, as going back to the old stage. See, this can be true about any change that it brings about. For example, with the introduction and invention of iron, right? Yes, it began empires. It began your Magadhan Empire, Mauryan Empire, but it also brought in stark realities of excessive differences, inequality, where people wished for pre-Iron Age. At this point of time, people started wishing for your pre-British age. Understanding? Now, if you see the current trend, it is not very far. We are wishing for a sustainable globalized phase or pre-globalization phase where the stress was not put in such a bad condition, because right now we are hit tariffs on tariffs, tariffs on tariffs. For just trying to continue and make sure today, if we agree for this ridiculous tariffs that, let's say, your present context US President Donald Trump has put additional tariffs and all of amounting to 50% tariffs, what will happen to our fishermen? What will happen to our farmers? What will happen to our dairy sector? So again, this is another new form of us trying to go back to the pre-stage, or otherwise the triumph of Swadeshi comes in all here. Understanding? People wish to go to this stage is because of the exploitations. Again, when we go back to your 1857, artisans, their handicrafts, all of it are completely ruined because of your British. And another thing, if you see, one important aspect is with respect to this Swadeshi came first as a social awakening, first trying to educate the masses as to what your concept of Swadeshi is. Many people spoke on terms with respect to your Swadeshi. M.G. Ranade, Mahadev Govind Ranade in 1872 went for a different approach. He said, it is a matter of our duty to prefer the local made clothes, even if it is costlier than the foreign clothes. So much so that this was used by many to even mock. So you are telling Swadeshi means you will use costlier clothes with poorer quality over cheaper goods with superior quality. Here it is not just about putting a price or a price tag on a product, but the huge backdrop it carries. Understanding? Now before we proceed further, If you are someone who is looking forward to kickstart your UPSC civil service journey, look no further, you have found the right spot with Legacy IAS Academy. Why should you choose Legacy IAS Academy? First and foremost, it maintains its batch limit at 40 members per limit so as to give you personalized attention. It also has one-on-one mentorship and also make sure that you are easily able to converse with the in-house faculties, educators and chart out a plan for you in whichever stage of the examination you feel stuck or in order to carry forward the next stage. Legacy IAS Academy also offers you prelims mock test series, daily mains answer writing alongside interview mock tests. One of the most important thing about Legacy IAS Academy is we offer both online as well as offline courses, and these courses are available in both weekend as well as weekday batches. For those of you who are working professionals or students, you can opt for the weekend courses. Another most important thing on how the classes are, if you have to see for yourself, schedule a demo class either online or offline and look for it yourself. For more details and information, you can check out Legacy IAS website or you can call to the number given. Okay, more details will be pinned down in the description. Coming back to the topic in hand. Now yes, we are discussing about Swadeshi. Now one main thing about Swadeshi is we spoke about 1800s, right? Now we will transition the Swadeshi to 1900s. So before we do that, let's sum up what we saw in the 1800s. See, with respect to Swadeshi, it had a religious angle. It was almost like a matter of duty to pick Swadeshi nationalism. Even though at that point of time even an entire unity of nationalism was not there, but a seed of nationalism was sown in, identity was sown in. So we see religious aspects, we see spiritual aspects, we see the identity aspects being sown in. Now we transition to the 1900s. Pioneers with respect to showcasing the need for Swadeshi or evils of the British was showcased by your Dadabhai Naoroji, R.C. Dutt. How exactly? Let's take with respect to Dadabhai Naoroji, who put forward the drain theory of India. How was money being drained from India? Two ways. First and foremost, Dadabhai Naoroji had put forward a theory where Indian imports, that is your cheap British made goods, were exceeding its exports. As in, what we are getting into our country was way more than what we are sending out from our country. So Indian wealth was sent to these countries. Second thing is maintenance of your civil services, salaries, pensions, etc., which was very costly and the Indians had to pay for that. In other words, this is the highest form of a tax a person can pay for his servitude. You are paying huge amount of money to gain your own slavery. Yes, this was rightly put forward by Dadabhai Naoroji, wherein the amount of money that is spent on the other country which could have been used for India. Okay, this is what led to your drain theory. Again, R.C. Dutt also in Economic History of India has also highlighted that deindustrialization by British, meaning again he points out how your British made sure they ruined the handicraft, they ruined the structure of Indian economy so much so that it put additional burden on agriculture. and this agriculture was also kept in such a flawed manner so as to benefit the British only. In either way, the British were the ultimate benefactors, where we were the raw material supplier and market for British good. So this for the first time set forward or put an intellectual movement for Swadeshi. 1800s we saw a religious tone, we saw it as a matter of duty. Now we see it from the intellectual perspective. Understanding? Previously they wished for pre-British, that is Raja period of time, king period of time. But now they are trying to put forward the idea that the British rule is not good for India. Understanding? Now when we see Swadeshi as a movement with respect to nationalism, wherein leaders such as Tilak, Lala Lajpat Rai, Bipin Chandra Pal and Chidambaram Pillai, what happened is, after your Curzon announced partition of Bengal, again we all know why the partition was. They claimed it was for administrative convenience, but it was largely because of trying to break down the nerve center of nationalism. In here, post the Bengal split, they wanted to create Swadeshi movement, which means boycott your British goods. So this concept of boycott was now associated largely with nationalism and showing their angst against the British rule. Understanding? So here this sowed the seeds of nationalism. Again 1907 we will see Surat split happens, where your moderates, extremists and all divide. One of the reason is how they wanted to carry forward this Swadeshi. Initially the moderates wanted to keep the Swadeshi movement within Bengal itself, but leaders such as Tilak wanted to bring the Swadeshi movement to Bombay, Lala Lajpat Rai wanted to bring it to Punjab, Bipin Chandra Pal to Bengal and Chidambaram Pillai to Madras Presidency. The first formal declaration of your Swadeshi with respect to boycott movement, understanding the word I am using here is boycott movement, started with the boycott of Manchester cloth, boycott of Liverpool salt in the Calcutta Town Hall resolution. Okay. Now in here they did not just go on to boycott for the products. The boycott was not limited to products, but also services. Meaning what? Boycott British schools, colleges, understanding, your practice, law, everything. So because of this, what happened was, there was a rise of Swadeshi enterprises or Swadeshi industrialization, but we cannot give it to the exact tag of industrialization, wherein a lot of Indian made textiles, soaps, banks, Bengal chemicals, all these were started with their main aim was not profit, but it was largely driven by your nationalism. Understanding? Now with the entry of Gandhi in 1915, we start Swadeshi, wherein he associated the definition of here Swadeshi also undergoes a change, wherein he gives it as a symbol of self-reliance, duty, morality. Understanding? See, first and foremost, post this 1915 period, we also see your First World War, where we see the evils of industrialization. What is this industrialization let's say possible to do? So at this point of time, we see post your 1905 itself, we see huge amount of famines as a common regular occurrence, and from the international ambit of First World War, it further let's say it worsened the scenario, it accentuated the situation. So that time they moved back to, we use the word, right, pre. So here they moved back to Panchayati Raj, revival of indigenous institutions, decentralization. So much so that Gandhi goes on to tell that if this Swadeshi is not going to put millions of people, millions of workers into famines or starvation, then I would take this any day over industrialization. Understanding? So here they associated economics with morality. They started boycotting goods which were not made with sweat, not made with human labor. So which means they were against mechanization. Okay? So this gave the aspect of, let's say, a moral obligation. Understanding? So this was the change of Swadeshi during your Gandhian period. Now again, with respect to Gandhian period and modern industry, Gandhi's vision was more of anti-industrialism, anti-materialism, more of self-sufficiency, Gram Rajya. Okay, he tells that the true Gram Rajya will lead to Ram Rajya. Understanding? Whereas now if we see with respect to industrialization itself, we can see the difference from Nehru to Gandhi itself. They were supporting modern Indian owned industries. They supported industrial development, they wanted modernization in economics. Understanding? So eventually the Nehruvian model, if you see with respect to the economy, it was a mixed economic model, both state owned as well as private owned. It was import substitution, public sector undertakings, self-reliant industrialization, indigenization, and the same thing can be witnessed in his policies also, which is from your second 5-year plan and all. So now we will see Swadeshi after independence, that is 1950s to 1990s era, how did it transform? First and foremost, it guided the protectionist policies. Here look at this. The keywords here we will see is import substitution, license Raj, public sector undertakings. The same concept goes on, and this is to make sure that this will be preventing the modern imperialism, right? And alongside ours became a closed economy in order to protect for our economy to grow. So this was more of a state-led growth than a natural growth or trying to move towards decentralization. It was largely a state was trying to provide a safety net for its local industrialization, because they felt that industrialization is a necessary evil, we have no way of escaping it. One way of trying to deal with this is we make sure that the state protects the budding state industries. Now if you see with respect to the present scenario, that is especially post 1990s onwards, when economic reforms happens, your RSS also with the ideologically moved towards your Swadeshi. So with respect to moving towards Swadeshi, they have always been against your or anti-Westernism, trying to move towards more of nationalism. Now when we speak about Modi or Narendra Modi, especially from 2014 onwards, the first term onwards, if you see, it is more towards both capitalism as well as a balance of nationalism. When I tell capitalism as well as a balance of nationalism, which means, for example, in the very first term, we see ease of doing business, yes, reducing red tapeism, e-governance, all of this including, yes, the inclusivity also started increasing, and also it became a budding growth for entrepreneurs, etc. At the same point of time, this was balanced with concepts such as Atmanirbhar Bharat, and now presently we discussed vocal for local, where we have to follow Gandhi's Charkha was again re-invoked, right? And also we have campaigns such as Make in India, Startup India, Digital India, Atmanirbhar Bharat. What is this? Trying to speak on terms of your industrialization, but Indian owned, Indian growth. Understanding? So here we are trying to balance it with nationalism and localization. So Swadeshi presently means nationalization plus localization for globalization. Especially post COVID era, we have realized the strength and need more for your Atmanirbhar Bharat or self-sufficiency right now. So now it is about economic sovereignty, as in when we are slapped back with tariffs on tariffs for carrying out our particular country's interests, we are called protectionists, we are called tariff kings, while they are doing to serve their best interests, example your USA. So this is a geopolitical resilience, and also this is the national pride that is associated as of now with respect to Swadeshi. So Swadeshi now also has the angle of nationalistic pride in Indianness. Made in India campaign, make in India. So for the final conclusion, what is Swadeshi? We have seen how we have evolved from 1800s to 2025. Where it started from religious aspect to it started as the identity concept, then it went on to create a moral obligation, then we started with the post-independence where we start to set out the country in a more resilient and reliant manner to present days vocal for local. So as of now, Swadeshi means it is a dynamic concept, which means it is ever evolving. It was relevant back then, it was relevant even now, it will be relevant even forward. It just increases and enhances based on the era we are entering to. So first and foremost, with respect to Swadeshi, it is the very much need, and also we have to balance national self-reliance with global integration. Understanding? This is it for your Swadeshi. If you like our content, subscribe to our channel, hit the like button, share it along with your friends. Thank you.